Yes. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. I want to thank you all for coming and welcome you in lovely Eindhoven at the location of IO Digital. Don't mind Daniel. He's our Instagram guy. He's he's taking all the nice photos. I would like to start with a short introduction. I have an agenda. Talk you through a few things I think are relevant for PWA. And then I have three very interesting speakers. They're going to speak a little about what they think about PWA, how it's used, how they think they should use it. And then in the end, we end with a mingle, nice drinks, and some food. So it's going to be an open session. I don't want people just sitting here and not a show. We have to talk to each other. And if you are reluctant to talk to me now, you can talk to me afterwards. All right. TJ. Yeah, so this is these are the organizers. I'm one of the board members of Shopware United. Shopware United is it's going a long way. Let me start with a quick photo shoot. I need to update my photo. There's something different about me. I'm Wouter and Otter. I am the director of support desk in H1, web development. I'm from the Netherlands, and in the back is my Instagram master. He's Daniel Heunke, if I. And he's the managing director of Overdose, EMEA, and he's from Germany. What is Shopware United? Does anybody know Shopware United already? I think quite a lot of people. We are. I think we're going to be famous for our pre-events. We're very good at stealing the show before the show. This is one of the things we do. We like to organize events. We like to get people together, talk about shopware, talk about anything that's related to e-commerce. We want to be inclusive. This is Maarten. By the way, this is Maarten. He's one of the organizers. He's from IO Digital. Now he's the DJ. We call this a beta because we haven't done this in 3 years due to Corona. Now we're finally able to go out and organize meetups. We want you also to come up with meetups. It could be at your location. Any topic, be it shopware related, is welcome. For this session, I don't think we have problems with the online community being muted, but this is it's a hybrid event. We're going to stream it. If you have a question, like I said, raise your hand or use the chat, and be kind and respectful. I expect nothing less from all of you. Let me start with thanking Gartner. This is what was in my mind to talk about. And yesterday they released this. It's called the Hype Cycle for Digital Commerce for this year. And does anybody know where PWA is? Yeah. It's exactly where I thought it would be. Is everybody familiar with this graph? So you have the innovation where it's just a really cool idea, then it starts to hype. Everybody starts to talk about it. One point, people, you come again with this PWA, and I think we've had that part, and now it's going to go to a position where it's no longer a hype, but it's part of the ecosystem. Of course, Shopware has a PWA set up. They've partnered with Vue Storefront. It's quite a lean setup. It's API, of course, API first. That's also from Shopware, the way to do it. I want to introduce the first speaker. His name is Philip, and this you have to help me. Krejci. And he's going to give us some background developer experience in developing with PWA and focusing on performance.
Thank you very much. And I also have to introduce my colleague David, which is far more important than me here. So he will join us soon. Okay. A bit of magic here. No? Can you help? Okay. Well, we have it. So thank you for the hype cycle. It was very interesting graph showing where we are and where we are going with digital commerce. And I think PWA is with us for some time, but still, as Wouter said, we are on the beginning. We are on the beginning of the maturity. We know from our experience in PWA, based on our project, based on our research and development, based on our previous engagements in previous companies. Since 2015, we are also around with PWA since 2019 as a company. So a lot of experience and blind ways, blind paths. So long journey, and we would like to tell something more and share with you what we have seen and recognized so far. Cool. So expectations. Do you think that so far the expectations about PWA were delivered? I think there is several areas where we can say that these are important for customers, like its customer experience. Okay, that's cool. It might be true. Customers are happy. Website is fast. Business performance is also going up. Better conversion rates, lower bounce rates, and similar stuff. That's pretty cool. This works. I think we can say that after some time, after several years. Of course, scalability. We know it's not only technical, which is nice, but also business scalability and organizational scalability around the development, around the business at all. Sustainability, when you have successfully introduced headless commerce architecture, you can be more than happy that you are that you have PWA, because when you want to switch to new platform, new version, major upgrade, like you have in Shopware right now, you are happy that you are in PWA landscape and headless commerce. So this works. Flexibility, of course. You have various options how to approach the development, to customize your experience. But what is important to deliver such expectations? I mean, the level of satisfaction. We think, and based on our experience, that there are few important areas. It's like Google. Google tell us what to do. Google is major dominant player, and he established the rules about the websites, about the internet. That's just true. We have to count with. What is important also is the data-driven approach. Means data-driven decisions have to be everywhere in your decision process. Anything you do, it's like how your site is performing. These are the metrics here. How quick is the development, and so on. So several data which you have to collect in order to fulfill the expectations or the objectives which comes from the expectations. What is also important is development productivity. I mean, developers have to be engaged. They need to be productive with the PWA development. They need to be engaged. They like work with latest technologies. That's the current landscape. The developers just need engagement. That's the thing. And what's important around is the performance culture which you build during your development, during development operations, during your R&D, during delivery to your customers, during content building, anything. It's something which is very important in order to achieve the expectations of your customers, merchants, and so on. But what does it mean? What performance means for or to merchants? What do you think? Money. Okay. Anything else? Speed. Yeah. David, can you help us?
Yeah. Thank you, Philip. Hi, it's Philip's colleague here. Philip, when you have the presentation. Okay. So you were probably partially right. Many times it's like this because everybody looks at the number in page speed, right? They look at that 100 and that's everything. Sorry about that. But that everything else actually leads to 100% in page speed. Now, it's understandable that they are looking for that 100% because it's easily readable. It's something that you can share with everybody. You don't have to talk about 5 numbers. It's just green, and that means that's great, right? Well, obviously, it's hard to achieve that with old front ends, with Symfony templates. You have to go for PWA if you want to be fast. Now, I'd like to share with you our experience that started 3 years ago. It was on the top of the hype, so everything that was available was really hyped, and you will see that shortly because the first solution that we've tried actually had almost nothing working. I guess you know this error. Have you seen it? Have you seen that somewhere? Oh, maybe. Well, this basically means that your application is not returning any valid content to your robots, so SEO is gone. Besides that, performance was bad. Well, at least it was extendable, right? So we went for another solution. It was better. Extendability was there somehow. The stack was up to date, but still, SEO wasn't ideal. Have you heard about dynamic rendering? Yeah, so the second type of solution that we've came across had that. It comes with several issues. You have to deal with caching, another service, another complexity. So it increases costs and also prolongs things, reduces productivity. You probably don't want that in the long run, but still better than the first one, right? And the final solution looked pretty good. It had full SSR, it was fast, it was sort of good documented, but it was doing something pretty bad. Cloaking. I guess you know that. SEO guys here, any? Do you know what cloaking is? Right, cool. So it was basically providing different content to robots and to people to fake Google page speed. It was sending page without JavaScript to Google page speed. Well, we didn't find anything that would work for us. So we had to do something ourselves. We didn't want to build something from scratch, right? Because it would end up just like the solutions that you have seen. So we came across Nuxt. Any experience with Nuxt here? Yeah, cool. So it had everything. It had SSR, it had a workbox, it had everything that you needed for a PWA app. But if you're building something in Nuxt and it's getting bigger, you usually come across problems because Nuxt itself, it's pretty big. It has issues with blocking time, and also it is having a hard time tree shaking. So the application is getting rapidly bigger as your team grows, and there is no really easy way around it. Well, why is that a problem? I mean, so we are sending bigger JavaScript to the client, okay? Well, core web vitals are the problem. Have you heard of them? I guess you did. Yeah. Core web vitals are trying to quite quantify how fast your app is, how well it works for your user. And that's something that is still evolving. Have you seen INP? This is pretty new in core web vitals. No? Great. So this is something where PWA comes in handy because that's measuring basically how long does it take for you to see next reaction. When you click on button, that time until something happens, that is INP. It's basically about to replace FID in the long run. Anyways, these limitations of Nuxt made it impossible to be compliant with core web vitals. So we had to move on, and we had to build something else. We were playing around with that for a while, and we built sort of MVP on the several projects. On this stack, do you know Wit? Do you know Vue.js? Yeah, right. So we've picked that one because this is helping us a lot, because if you run yarn build, for example, 20 times a day, then you lose 3 minutes if your builds are slow, right? With Vue.js, it's in 1 second. So you can save up to one hour per day for a developer. So it increases your productivity again. And another thing that we like to use is Vue 3. As you know, Nuxt is built on Vue 2. That is going to end of support pretty soon. Vue 3 is also more performant because it has lower blocking time, and it's easier to find developers for Vue than for React. Well, it's hard to find any developers, right? But with Vue, it's easier because it looks similar to native HTML, because React has JSX, which is way harder to learn when you're coming from old background, from old frameworks. So Vue helps with that. It increases productivity because you can scale your teams. You can find developers easily. Now, Pinia is something else that helps with scalability of your application. Vuex is probably known to most of you. That is something that is used for state management in your applications. So if you are logged in, you have something in your cart that is stored globally in your applications. Vuex had hard time splitting this per page type, so you loaded everything at once. Pinot is way better at this, so if you have 100 modules, you can load just what you need, and you can, again, make your application smaller. And last but not least, we like to use Tailwind, because it's something that ships the smallest CSS that you can, and it provides configuration that you can basically give to your client. You can change the colors and logo, and you have eShop working, which is pretty cool, right? So it makes smaller projects cheaper, because you don't have to do it. You don't have to have coders for that. You just change configuration, and that's it. Now, there are several architectural patterns that are also helping with making application scalable. One of them is modular systems that help you in the long run. If your application grows and you have modules, you can just define what they should look like and then replace several parts. Now, one important thing that we have seen in old PWAs is middlewares. If you can avoid that, again, you will reduce costs, because you don't have to prepare CI/CD. You don't have to have another team for the middleware. If you can just have it all in one application, you increase productivity, and you need one less or two less developers, depending on your project. And also TypeScript. If your application grows, it's really hard to keep track on name of the variables, what can you use, name of the components. TypeScript is helping with that. It's telling developers what is available, what can be used. And in the long run, it increases productivity, especially if you want to go open source. Now, let's say that we've used this stack. We have modern framework. Is it enough? Is any of you guys having issues with third parties in your projects? Meaning that somebody injects 1 kilobyte of JavaScript via GTM. Is it happening to you? Megabyte, yeah. Because as you can almost see in here, our application has around 200 kilobytes, but somebody just injected 400 kilobytes. Well, then we can do whatever we want, but the app won't be fast. Never. It can be CMS guys, somebody can just inject something in an article. It can be GTM guys, somebody can inject JavaScript via container. There can be too much code because of A/B testing. Now, what can we do about that? There is several things that we need to fix. The cost can be also the developers. So we have to fix our pipelines, our processes, meaning that we need to add checks to development process that will not allow you to push code that will break your performance. For example, speed curve has check performance budget functions for that. That's pretty easy to put to your CI. And another thing that we can do is tell testers to do that. If you have it in pipeline and there is somebody who is responsible for releases, that's the guy who can check it before he actually releases that. This is the hard part, because we as developers, we can take care about that. We can add processes, check size of the code, etc. But it's hard to control the other guys. Now, the first thing that you can do is that you can create command lines that you keep updated, and they are using them. But usually, that's not enough. Now, for us, the most efficient way so far is using Partytown. Have you heard of that? Partytown.js? No. Well, that's something that you basically take, add it to your website, and it's execute all third-party scripts in separate threads, and it communicates with your web application. So you're not delaying rendering of your web application. It's open source. You can look it up. We've released it to one production, and it seems to be working pretty good so far. So there's something we can do to control third parties. Anyways, even if you add checks to CI/CD, even if you control third parties, even if you have guidelines, it doesn't help you because you need to build the culture in your team. You need to explain to your stakeholders why it's important to have fast application. You need to set KPIs, you need to prepare trainings, and you need to talk about it all over and again. We have seen it on, I think, like 2 or 3 big projects that even if you create all the checks and you don't have responsible guy for the performance, it's not in KPIs, it will never work. Philip, you want to talk about something?
Maybe. So, was it interesting? I hope so. And we bring something for you. What's that? So let's look. We as a storefront are opening our PWA solution to Shopware as an open source. And we are here to tell you this. Maybe you have checked something about us or not, but I have some additional information about this. We came from Magento World. For example, me personally, I'm with Magento since 2008, so I'm more like inventory there, we were looking which platform, and we had successfully implemented the PWA solution for Magento, which is generally available. It's live. We have some new, quite nice projects, rather medium size, I would say. But still, we were looking how could we open new or bring some new ideas. How could we accelerate innovations, and the open source at the end of the day came as something which makes sense to us, basically. So right now we are introducing early access program to our solution built and integrated against Shopware. So you can sign up there over this QR code. Definitely, we would like to welcome your feedback, because you are the Shopware guys, and that's really important for us to understand what are your needs, what merchants are looking for. We definitely would like to manage a roadmap with you guys, and of course, how it's quite common, contribute to welcome some contributions in any form. So this is what we have for you right now. We commit that we will make generally available. We will make the Shopware Storefront X integration and Shopware Storefront X PWA solution generally available by the end of summer. So sign up to see more. Thank you.
Thank you for that. I think I don't need to introduce our next speaker. Everybody knows her. Maybe she needs a little hand. Are you okay? Okay. It's Jamie Maria Schouren from Deity, and she will talk about more of the business opportunities that are available using and some fun. Always fun. The hookup. Everybody still awake? Push the right button. Yeah.
I broke my arm. Ooh, that's loud. Okay, so I broke my arm, so I have to use a headset. Broke my thumb. I have a 2-year-old son, and he had a bouncy castle on his birthday, and I thought I was still 20, and I could do that. But then alcohol and stuff happens, and you know, right? And I figured it out the day after, actually. In the evening, I didn't even feel it. I woke up at night like, oh, there's something wrong, and it was wrong. But besides that, I'm going to talk about Deity, something more fun than my broken finger. I can tell you all the rest of the stories later in the drink, but let's talk about Deity today. We compose commerce, and I'm talking today a little bit about that as it is a bit related to PWA, but I try to focus on PWA, and I'm going to do that in a little bit boring way, I think. It's going to be a little bit fun. I have 45 slides in 30 minutes, so it should be good. If you have any questions, shout. If I speak too fast, let me know as well, because that's a talent of me. So, first of all, I'm going to ask you a few things, and I think we have the right age here. Who knows who this is? Do you remember? Yes? Tell us. It's a car phone, yes. It's one of the very first mobile phones, and in about 30 years, a little bit more, this happened, right? We went from that to this. And DeLorean, you probably know, Back to the Future, and it's actually coming back in the future as a full electric car. If we didn't know yet, it's really amazing. It looks really, really cool. Also, very good innovation. Another one, Videoland, and I think only our Dutch people know you could go and rent the video for 5 gulden for a whole weekend, and there was always this fancy corner nobody could go, and very fun. And that now turned into Videoland, but now this, right? It's been becoming an online service streaming, and we just pay per month and we can get whatever we want. And then we have this, obviously a Walkman. We had some music, and you had to turn back the tapes. Now became this, obviously, some streaming music. But what actually happened all those years in e-commerce? Because nothing really significant, I don't think, happened there. Of course, we made some money, right? So it's not 30 years ago, because it's 20 years ago, e-commerce. We had about 550 billion a year in e-commerce, and that came 5.5 trillion. Obviously, we made a lot of money, and that is a number of zeros. And if I would divide that over all the Dutch people, we would all could buy a nice house. But that's about it, right? Because in tech, we have platforms, and we still have platforms. And we had platforms back then, and we still had them. And about 30 years ago, these platforms under the hood would look like this. Some spaghetti pixelized, and they kind of look like this now, a better spaghetti, but still a spaghetti, right? And more high definition spaghetti, but still a spaghetti. And then we had some very innovative people who said, let's throw that shit in the cloud, and we did, and now we have spaghetti in the cloud. And but that doesn't make it necessarily fast, right? That doesn't make it necessarily good. And especially if we look at the landscape of e-commerce, which did change a lot, because we have a lot of vendors. And I see some vendors also here, and there's like you pay, and there's a lot of things that happened. And if you would like to connect them to an old system, it's going to look something like this, right? And I think some of you have to be very honest that this is how some shops look like in the back end, or if they get really big, something like this. Right? So, yeah, I think some of you are very familiar with this image. But we can change that, and we change that basically in the architecture. And that is because most shops still today are built on an architecture which is called a monolithic architecture, where we have a front end really, really tightly connected to our back-end services, one big piece of, let's say, spaghetti. Okay, to make that a little bit easier, we said, let's rip that front end apart, let's make it headless, let's put that aside and make sure that we can build nice experiences. So we went to the headless scene, and that's really happening now, and some people are already doing it. But obviously, you can even make it more better, and by applying the same conditions as we're doing here for a front end, also to a back end. And that's where we end in a composable commerce. And I just said, you say, don't use middleware on your front end, but I would say use middleware on your front end because it's gonna make your life easier on your back end. And that is exactly, I'm not gonna do a commercial, but that is what we do. We make sure that you can connect all different backends through a commerce composer. And why am I blocking? Is that because I did a commercial? And then you push out front end 1, 2 more, and it's pretty easy. You take basically 3 steps. You say, hey, pick your commerce service in the back end, connect it all to the magical thing that we built, and then build your apps on the front end. But, because this is nice about architecture, and many people make a very big mistake in architecture world, and they say PWA is headless, but it's not. And what is the difference? I can have a monolith, and I can have headless, or I can have composable commerce, or whatever I want, and in both I can have a PWA. But it doesn't mean that a PWA is necessarily always headless, because it's not. So I'm going to take you back again, now not so far back, and that is to the time of Steve Jobs was still there, and he introduced the very first iPhone. And then he said, okay, this is a very cool device, and it's going to have an innovative new way to create applications for a mobile device. The very first time he talked about applications. And what he said was it's going to be Web 2.0, and you can integrate with your iPhone services, instant distribution, easy to update, secure, and sandbox on iPhone. And actually, this is a PWA that he's talking about. This is the beginning of PWA. He already talked about it. But it was never launched because the App Store came. And they made a lot of money with that, about 20, 30% on every transaction is theirs. But this is PWA. And the main blocker at the moment for PWA is Apple, but they were actually the ones introducing this whole concept. So what did we end up with after this kind of failed? Now, didn't necessarily fail, they made a business model out of it. Always fun, the business versus tech. And then this happens, right? 90 seconds page loads on phones. 2017, and then some of our cool developers said, okay, we're gonna fix this, because this looks like shit. So 2009, we had the concept of HTML5. We want to make better front ends and try to improve. And then we had this guy who said, okay, let me do that. So he started to build the very first Facebook hybrid app, one of the very first examples of what could be called kind of PWA. And it was in 2012, big launch, big money invested, but it was a failure. Why is Facebook's app such a piece of crap? It had the most reviews ever in the App Store, or in the online, whatever reviews, and they were on 1.42 on average, on more than 1 million reviews. And that is because it didn't really work how they wanted it to work. And he said, this is the biggest mistake we ever made, betting too much on HTML5 as opposed to native. A few years later, he made an even bigger mistake. Obviously, we know about the scandal with data, but at that moment, the mistake was in tech. And then he said, okay, we're going to do this differently. And then, we had the whole thing, okay, let's do mobile apps. And I'm sure plenty of you once burned their hands on making a mobile app. That's also the way I started as a developer one day, a long time ago, making native apps. And why would we do that? Because a native app would give us a lot of advantages. There we are again. We had a good performance, smooth animations, nice interactions, loading, offline support, very easy access through a home screen, and very high engagement. And that results basically in this kind of numbers where we say, yes, because they're so good, we spend 87% of our time on mobile apps when we are on our phone, which is true, right? And we do that in about 3 apps. So most of that, it's a messaging app, something like WhatsApp or something. We scroll the news, and we do something on social media, right? This is the stuff that we do. But it's so highly concentrated, and that also results on the business side, because does anybody know what is the average amount of apps that is installed per user per month? Can anybody take a guess? One, you think one? You think one? 0.5, anybody else has another guess? 3, you think 3? Oh, then you're good, because it's 0. Nobody installs apps. I don't do that. And it's true, I think about, does anybody install an app last month? You did? You did? Why? What was the app you installed? Did you feel, oh. And are you still using it? And do you still use it? You can't go to this point, as it's kind of necessary. And you, what did you install? And do you still use it? No, okay. Yeah, you could have used a PWA for that. So, because there's a lot of disadvantages, distribution problems, we cannot do SEO on apps, on native apps. We cannot tell people what's inside. We have to make a website who's telling what's inside the app so we can distribute it. Updating is a pain, right? Because you're gonna have to update it all the time. Application size, memory usage. The next time you cannot take a picture of a funny dog walking around, you're gonna delete that app. And then you have different OS systems, and 10% is going to App Store, 30% in case of Apple. So we as developers said again, we're gonna search for appiness. And what is appiness? Appiness is basically that app feeling, but in a better way, right? That experience of an app that's gonna make everybody happy. And then there was many of these projects. Some of you might know some, Crosswalk project, and BlackBerry even did a throw at it. But all of them had in common that they could not index them. You could not be able to scroll through what's actually happening there. So still no SEO. So, and if you cannot be found on Google, are you really part of the web? I mean, I think that's kind of an ethical question, but it kind of is, right? You're not really part of the web if you cannot talk about what you're doing. So the web strikes back 2016, and we got this amazing project called AMPs. So make some of you very happy. AMPs, static websites, some content being served very fast, but still no interaction, nothing fun, nothing dynamic, and you had this stupid link, Google, amp.google. whatever. So then some very creative people came and said, okay, we really have to change this, we have to add that real happiness. So they turned the whole thing around and made it into PWAs. Right? So you already told a lot about what PWAs are, so a very quick refresher on PWAs. Capable, reliable, installable, fast, engaging, and all this very cool stuff. Best of both worlds. Still a website, but additional features. No more app store, just the web. Hallelujah. But no. What happened? So technology was not ready yet back. I mean, remember? At that time, we were still dealing with Internet Explorer 7. And App Store, I mean, they wanted to make some money with this, so they're not going to let that go so easily, right? And the suspected revenue for them in 2020 was about 72 billion. And then was a little bit less on the Google Store. But, you know, they made a lot of money on that. And on the technical more side, we would say, okay, you know, we had some increased investment over standard websites, Apple iOS support, obviously, you need some additional code. We have the service workers that can be really difficult if you don't know how to deal with them. Big failures with SEO and JavaScript, as you just mentioned. And obviously COVID, everybody wanted to not take risk, but need to go online fast, so we're all gonna wait and not do anything. But there is some good news today, and that is that finally, in 2023, iOS is gonna allow some features of PWA. It's gonna happen. But, yeah, finally. But Gartner just made a new report, and it's actually the report that someone mentioned, I'm not sure where you are, mentioned, yeah, in front of me, mentioned before there's this new report, and it said, you know what, we shouldn't look at PWA just for the, you know, replacing apps, etc. We should just see, you know, it can do a lot of good stuff for our browser, and that is true. It can do a lot of good stuff, and that is a conversation I've had with many customers, hello, many times, that they say, yes, but iOS, yes, but Apple. But it doesn't mean that you have to disregard of all the good stuff if you cannot send a push notification, right? It doesn't make any sense. You can use a lot of stuff. So let's focus on the UX. And actually, that is what you can do with PWA. Today, PWA can give you a lot of nice stuff. And for example, what we do is that we made a full PWA, and it's based on React. That doesn't really make, it doesn't matter what kind of technology you use, but it's really easy to build because it's fully component-based. You can build based on requirements, you can build functional components, you can build UX components. How does it look like? How does it work? It's super fast, all the cool stuff. 100% SEO proof, as you mentioned, and that's because our middleware, and you said to let go of it, but I don't agree with that. Let's keep pushing that. But we make sure that the batteries are included. But one of the more important things is that it's not just a PWA, because we did see that mentioning that people said, hey, but we do need that native stuff. And why? Because there's native stuff that is very complex, and we still want to keep on doing that, and we cannot replace that fully by PWA. But we want to make the life more better of developers because we don't want you to build in different code bases. So we made sure our PWA is fully ready for launching in Google and the Apple Store. We can, with one click of a button, maybe 2 or 3, but at least not many, push our PWA fully to the App Store as well, Google as Apple Store. And then you get a lot of advantages because when it's in the Apple Store, you can tell your customer, hey, listen, we have that one code base, we can push to all these channels. And we can use then also the native tag from your phone. We can use camera, we can use, push notifications and all the other cool stuff that you want to use from your phone because we can actually build that there. And we still have that one code base. So yes, we made PWAs in the promise that they are, right? One code base, one thing to rule them all. But instead of ruling them from the browser, we rule them from all channels. So we made the PWA multi-channel. And that's also what Gartner said. He said, hey, let's use the PWAs, turning web users into mobile-first users, which includes native app users, and increase engagement and conversion rate, blah, 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 blah. But obviously, Gartner is good. It's saying all the stuff that we actually know as developers, and we as agencies, we know this. And we are struggling with getting this message to a customer, and why would you do that? And the main message actually is, if you're going to rebuild, why not build it the good way? Why not build it future-proof and just the good way? It doesn't really matter all the technical details. Why would you build something on old tech? Why would you build something Google doesn't like, nobody really likes? You can build it fast. And maybe in the future you can use it with extra features that are not available today. But what do you want? Most people are not here in the game to use the camera of an iPhone. They want just have a good website, which is fast, which is engaging, which is cool. And that is something you can do with PWA. And of course, the Gartner quotes are really nice, but they also sometimes make mistakes. And that is that they said at some point by 2020, PWA will have 50% of all general-purpose consumer-facing apps. And I think, we're way behind. That was it. Is it still on? Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Jamie. I've learned a new word. Is everybody happy now? Thank you for that. No, it's very interesting and fun. Then we have our last speaker. We can do, yeah, sorry. Yeah, you're going so fast. Sorry. Does anybody have a question for Jamie?
Anybody have a question? You do. Tell me. Yes. So I cannot say all the details, obviously. Yeah, it's also kind of, we're selling it, right? But what I can say is that we make sure that you, as a customer, merchant, agency, whatever, can focus on building your website. And we make sure it then pushes directly into the App Store. So when you make a change on your web, let's say web code base, or your main code base, we make sure that turnaround is made to make that, push that to the App Stores. And if you want to know more details, come and make an appointment with my colleague, Sharif, and he will not explain you what, he will sell it to you. Joking, joking. We're always open to talk. You're welcome. Who's next? Any other questions? Anybody else has a question? No? Okay. That was it.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Then our last speaker, Bavo Janss, and he's looking beyond the PWA. And this is, I think it's an interesting one to follow up after Jamie. So I'm going to set you up.
Thank you. I'm going to connect the stuff here. Wat doe jij? Yeah. Start something, right? I don't have a cursor. Oh, there it is. There we go. Welcome. Well, I'm going to start off with a question here. Who thinks that a PWA makes you more flexible? Yeah, that's it? About 5 people? Okay, nice. We live in a world that is becoming less and less stable. We saw a Brexit, which shook up all commerce in Europe. We saw American imposing tariffs for certain goods from China to China, which makes commerce a little more difficult. We see that sometimes hackers lay down complete companies. I have a client that was hacked by a company and they couldn't sell anything for at least 5 days. And we had to print out their orders from our web shop so they processed those by hand. And of course we had COVID. And we saw a big shift from offline sales to online sales. And just recently, Russia decided to invade Ukraine. And that made a big change in certain things, in certain areas, mainly energy, in how to, when you can sell things and what against what price. In these things, we have seen that there are problems that are caused by these disruptions in our world. But there are also chances, because every crisis makes never waste a good crisis. So, okay, you can do something. If something happens, then you can step in and make money from any disruption in that sort of things. The faster you can adapt to these crises, the more money you can make off such a crisis. So now, for my next question to you is, who thinks that a PWA can help you overcome these supply chain problems? Ooh, a lot of less hands. Well, I just heard in the previous speaker that a PWA was going to make me more flexible, but you're a little bit reluctant on that. We also have price wars, and they can be very small. So the new iPhone comes out, and that means that you have to do something with your old stock. And maybe you are lucky, and you can get a first 10,000 of iPhones in the Netherlands. But then how do you sell them? Because you know in the first week I can make a big profit in the iPhones, but maybe in the second and the third week, that's going to be more difficult. So can I ship them? Can I push them to the source? Can I push them to my channels? Can I reach these people that are very lucky to have that first iPhone in the first week? So I have to be flexible to shift my products across channels, maybe from my store to channels, maybe to other countries. I have to So can I do that? Am I ready in my store to scale up or scale down when there is nothing to sell? Who thinks that a PBA can make me more flexible in scaling up and scaling down? More hands. Thank you, Wouter. So I'm Bavo Janss. I'm a software architect here at I/O. So this is my home campus. And in the next 30 minutes, I'm going to guide you to how you can build a landscape that is more flexible for your customers, that you can support your customer in solving their challenges. We talked about the PWA. We talked about headless. And, well, I didn't hear the term yet, but there was a little bit about Maghreb. But these are technologies that are mainly focused on the front end of things, the things that you can see. But as with a big iceberg, the major thing of commerce is below the surface, is in the back end. That is where your commerce is being fulfilled. So you can have a beautiful front end, but if you cannot fulfill your promise to the client that is purchasing a product, you're worthless. But PWA has started something. It taught us that if you take things apart, if you separate your front end from your back end, if you break things into smaller bits, you are more flexible. And this goes not only for the front and the back end, but it also goes for the components in your back end. If you take more things apart into small bits, you are more flexible. And this is what is called composable commerce. And my colleague from Deity already mentioned this. So it was a nice introduction, but I'm going to dive in a little bit deeper. I have a customer, and this customer sells what he calls Chinese quality goods. And if you ever walked into a Action, into a Praxis, into another home garden, depot, that sort of warehouse setting, you probably saw their products. And I think you already also bought one of their products. And that could be Christmas lighting, that could be a badminton set, that could be a paint roller. Anything that's not edible, they sell it. They have that produced in China, it comes in big containers, and when you do that in very large amounts, that is very profitable. For this customer, we built a big landscape. And they push their products now B2C to 27 channels. And they fulfill that here from the Netherlands all with, they started off with just, I think, 10 orders a day, and now they're doing about 1,500 orders a day to B2C. They are on Amazon, they are on Bol, they are on Waycamp, they are on Video XL, they are on Wayfair, they are on various miracle platforms. And that's going good. And they make a profit. But recently they came to us and they say, well, we have acquired a small competitor. Could you make sure that all the products that they have also are going to all these channels? I said, yeah. Well, what is exactly your problem? You just push this product in your PIM and it will resolve itself. But I got it all wrong. They were not planning on merging two companies. They wanted to sell the products from the other company through these channels. That's why they purchased this. They weren't looking for a 3-year gathering of two companies with different sales teams, with different support desks. No, it has to be very simple. And we made this. We have made this. They have a Magento shop and very much channels. It was just a few cubes. I was getting bored painting all those cubes. And what we do, in River is their PIM system, and we push the products up to these channels, and when an order comes in, we push that down to their ERP, which is M3 in this case. And then it gets fulfilled. But now we have another company there. And this was the company I had to onboard. And they also have a shop. They have a Shopware shop, and they publish their products to a few channels. So what we had to do, we had to have their products had to go our way up there to our channels, and when an order came in, we had to push it down. And then already a small problem occurred. What if someone orders one product from the one company and a product from the other company? Then I have to split the order in two. And then when they're coming to track and trace codes and they're going to order statuses, how do I do that? And, oh, by the way, the products that we sell, we want to sell them in their shop as well. And when then an order comes, it has to go back to our ERP system. Damn. Yeah, so I was a software architect, so I had to fix this. I needed something that would resolve these issues, something smart in the middle, because I cannot change all the connectors that you have built in these shops and in these in-river things. So I needed something that would orchestrate these data flows. And I have a colleague with me, he's into music, and he says that this is not an orchestrator, this is a conductor, so I'm sorry for that. An orchestrator is something completely different in music, I don't know. So that's what we did. We made a bit of middleware that would orchestrate these data flows, that could split these orders in two, with order lines going that way, order lines going that way, and then recombining those orders and seeing where stuff would go. So, and then it looked like this. There is a vast middleware and everything, and that is staying on top of all these back systems. We call this a data layer. This is your single source of truth. This is your system of record. Typically, ERP, financials, that's what we do. And we learned in this exercise that we had to do a lot of more than that we expected. So we had to define what a product would look like for this customer. And you think that maybe that is simple, but if you then say, okay, it has to go to Amazon, it has to go to Bol, it has to go to a lot of other channels, they all have different attribute sets. They have different rulings. They have where the one says, okay, you have to do the sizes in millimeters, the other want it in meters, the other one says, no, you can have a sample unit and you have a number that indicated how much of the unit it is. So all these differences, you have to be prepared in your product setup. You have to decide what an order looks like. You have to decide what prices looks like, because different channels take on prices very differently. Someone say, I want to have the consumer price. Others say, no, you have to split up transport price, or you have to give up a price range. So you have a very complex definition of what a price will look like for a product for this specific customer. So we did all this, and we found out that we actually benefited from laying these things down. And now it's actually far more easy to onboard another channel or to onboard another customer, because they already told us they are going to do that in the near future. This middleware layer also provides an additional feature, and that is that it provides security. Because all my system of records that lay down in this data layer are now protected by this middleware layer. Nothing from the outside comes in what I don't allow. So this is principle of least privilege. Only the things that are allowed are going through this layer. And for many of the new products that we take on, we take this data layer with a middleware layer on top as a prerequisite for all our projects. Classically, the commerce layer sits on top of this middleware layer. And in the most simple form, this is just a Magento or a Shopware shop. It's just sitting there. But we see that are coming more and more components in this layer. And it starts with the simple things, like payment, like analytics, search, marketing, service, chatbots, personalizations, loyalty programs. There are a lot of vendors that provide these services that have to land on top of this middleware layer. This middleware layer is connecting all these things together. these components are very specialized, and they're doing a far more better job in a certain field than that your best of suite solution is currently doing. And then the question is, yeah, but what components do I have to choose for my business? And this is where the 90% rule comes in. So the majority of your business is not unique. And that means that even when you sell these very expensive Gucci bags, that you can still just have a shop, that you just do fulfillment by putting it in a box. You send the track and trace codes. That's nothing different there. You have coupon codes. You are not doing something very special, although you have a very special product. And if you see with all the components that are out there, you can easily choose a set of components that will support your business needs. So, and that's what we do for these customers. We guide them in a discovery phase. Okay, what do you need? What components are we choosing for you? And we make sure that they are communicating with each other. We see that lots of these components have large overlaps. They do something with search, with recommendations. Well, don't be afraid to say, okay, I want that search and I want that recommendation engine, although there is a large overlap. Because don't tailor the stuff that is coming out of the box. Just connect them together with middleware and you're good to go. Because the glue that we have connected them with on the sublayer, that will connect these components together. And the glue that makes your business, there is your business, is in the glue. So if you have special way of doing things, you can lay that down in that middleware layer. Lots of these components have built-in connectors to other components. So if you have a big commerce that has a direct connection to certain platforms, Contentful, that sort of stuff. We recommend not using these direct connectors, because once you are then putting a component in that has their direct connections to other components, that means that they are harder to take out at a later stage, because the strings are attached and you get the spaghetti that we already seen. So if you are in control of all the connections that are being laid down in your middleware, it's far more easy to take out certain components and replace them by another. If you are planning on going headless, you need another layer on top. This layer is somewhat the same as the other middleware layer, but it serves a different function. What this layer does, similar to the layer that is below, is that it is orchestrating data. But it orchestrates data in another way. Because it does that for, okay, where does the data have to come from and where does it have to go to? Instead of you putting stuff in your cart or something, it has to go to the commerce engine. When you have a storytelling or you have a picture, then it has to come from the content from the CMS. But what it mostly does is that it separates user-specific data from public data, and that it can combine that into one call for the front end. So the front end can make simple calls to this back end, to this middleware layer, and the middleware layer finds out where the data is coming from, and the front end can just do simple calls. The middleware layer then is in charge of session management, of combining data and distributing data back to the backend systems. And it does a lot of caching, because this is where you don't want that your backend system have to cache themselves. So you have to be very sure that the data that is coming from your backend is real-time data. And then you can build PWA, PWA on top of this layer. But there is room for more. You can build an app. We have also seen that. And what most people miss here for this front-end layer, the other thing that has to land here, is IoT devices. We see there are a lot of more IoT being built into machinery, into your washing machine, into your car, into your solar panels, and you don't want that to land directly into your back-end systems. You want to have that there is a layer between what the machines that you set out, that are maybe out there for 5 or 10 years, are servicing as data to your front-end layer and pushing data back, and that they can still be operational after lots of years, and that you can easily change your back-end systems. And you wouldn't be able that if it would directly go into one of your back-end systems, then you would not be able. You had to hold on to those systems as long as all this machinery that is out there is sending and receiving data. I have another customer of mine, and he sells these beautiful, shiny stainless steel machinery for food production. These are very large machines, and these are built up of mostly standard components. And they stick them together and they build what they call a street. These streets, as they call them, are very heavy used. They have a lot of wear and tear, and it means that lots of the parts that are in there have to be replaced regularly. These have also IoT providing data of how much they are used, so the people that are maintain these things know when they are bound to be replaced. And my customer sells these things all around the world because obviously in the Netherlands we are good at producing these things. I didn't know that, but that's what my client tells me. And so this is Kim. Kim is the sales representative in Korea, South Korea, and they said, well, we want to do the service, the website, the support platform, we want to do that in-house because they don't understand the English. We have a lot of maintenance engineers, and they want to have that in Korea. We said, well, we translate that. Doesn't seem like that's a problem because, well, we ask someone that speaks Korean, and they say, no, that's not going to work. Because we have a different culture, we have different sites. They are not used to that, so we want to do it ourselves. So they set up a Korean team. Actually, we call him Kim, but that seems to be his last name, and everybody in Korea is called Kim, so it was a big no-no, but he can handle that. So the signs are very easy to read, as you can see, but so they wanted to develop this website with a local team, but they wanted that the fulfillment would be just done as normal in the Netherlands. So, so we had already had this platform for them. We had the portal, we had the apps, we had the IoT stuff ready. And what we wanted is that they would connect directly to our front-end layer, to our middleware. And that's exactly what they did. They built their own PWA website for the Korean market. And the thing that we learned is that we didn't have our documentation in all the right order. So it took us a lot of time to support them with all the communication. That was not always easy. But finally, we had the documentation in order, and we had the open API specs that they can use and where they could use to put in their orders to see what the status of certain shipments were and how they could reorder stuff. So when we tell our clients this story of how they have to compose their landscape in a new way with middleware layer, with components, they say, okay, nice, I like that. But how do we get there? We have lots of things to do. We have projects, we have campaigns. We don't have time for this. And then you have to build a complete new landscape. When you are going to be ready for that? In 3 years' time, or 1 year time, or and in the meanwhile, what we do in the meanwhile? We cannot do commerce anymore, or we cannot upgrade, or we cannot extend, or how do we do that? So I'm going to take you on a tour what a possible solution is to slowly migrate to a composable landscape. And I'm going to start off with where lots of our clients are. And that means that they have a large ERP system in the back. An ERP system that solves all their problems with PIM functionality, with CMS functionality, with order management functionality, with customer relations management, everything in one big monolith. And on top, they have another monolith, and that's their store, being it a Shopware or a Magento, with all the features in the store. And one of the first things that we see that is taken out is the PIM functionality of the ERP, because the ERP is not very good in PIM functionality. Certainly if you go on multilingual, then you see that that is hard for an ERP. If you have different attribute sets, that is hard for an ERP. And if you take in a single PIM system, then it's far more easy. So we take that out, and we also introduce the middleware layer here. And it's just small. It's the small middleware layer. You see it? So it's easy. And the middleware layer is communicating from the big ERP, putting the products in the PIM, and then from the PIM to the shop. And after this first step, which is a very big step, although it looks very small, but we have now a middleware layer. And now, for the next step, it's far more easier to take other things out of the ERP system into a separate system. And we make sure that it's all communicating with the middleware layer, so it's all connected to the middleware. And in the front end, we can also take stuff out. And what is the first step that most of our customers take out is the search. The search, because the search in most commerce solutions is not that good, and there are very good providers in having more specialized search. And now is the question, when do I start with my headless front end? Well, I think the order here is very flexible. So you can do things in another order. I could not have done anything to my backend systems and just started with taking out the search, or I could just have started with going headless. So, and again, I have to build here a little bit of headless front end to support maybe a small PWA. The nice thing of this is that I can just keep on running my shop in the usual way, and I can build a headless system next to that, and I can fully test it. I can even A/B test it between the headless shop and the old shop and see what the differences are. Sorry. I don't have a mute button here. And now we are at the final stage of composable commerce. Everything in our backend is being separated into separate containers. In our commerce layer, everything is separated, and I have multiple front ends that I can support outfacing. I also draw some microservices in here. And I told you about the components and how flexible they are and how many vendors there are and what a good job they are doing and how easy it is to compose your specific landscape for your customer. But in some cases, we see that we do need some microservices. Microservices are interesting for pricing. That is our main microservice that we build is a pricing engine. Because you are in a product detail page and you have a certain configuration, and then you want on the spot, you want to have for that amount of, I want to order 10,000 or I want to order 40,000. What is my price then with the customer specific pricing rules with a specific configuration? And that's something that the pricing engine, you want a microservice that responds very fast to changes that the customer makes in the front end. And once we are here, now is the moment that we can easily, that animation go very fast. So where we can exchange components that we already have with other components, because they are only connected to these middleware layers. So that is the connection that I have to change, and the other things just keep on running. And I can even do a A/B test in my backend, so I can have a new system next to that, and then I can switch, okay, does this work? So I can do dry run or something like, okay, does it do the same as that I expect? So that's already very nice. Okay, I hope I didn't talk too fast for you all, but I have a nice finishing, so I'm gonna wrap it up for you. We talked about these layers. The data layer, already at the bottom, a commerce layer on top, and a front layer at top. I don't say front end, I say front, because it's not only a front end, there are also components that can sit on this that are not human interactable, but it could be my washing machine that's sending everything every time that I push my washing machine on wash, something to Bosch to tell them that I do something. I don't know what it does, but it's connected to the internet somehow. And the other important thing is that there are two layers in between that are middleware that do the integration between these layers. And then you ask, well, where is Shopware? Well, Shopware is sitting in this commerce layer. Where's my PWA? That is in the top layer. And I started off with asking you, is what does being agile mean? Well, being agile means that you take your landscape into smaller parts so that you can replace these parts, that you can add new parts, that you can remove parts that you don't use anymore. And being flexible means that you have small parts that you can separately from each other extend or shrink depending on how much you need them. And we typically see that there are much more and more services in the cloud that are easily extendable and easily shrinkable depending on your needs. Well, that was it. Thank you.
Very impressive. Does anybody have a question for Bavo? In the back.
Yes, so we have a wide range. So we use ESBs like Camel, for example, where you have much flexibility and you can actually code a lot of integrations. We use at the low end something like Alumio, which is very flexible, but it's almost low code. You just connect the various data flows to each other in a visual interface. And for more advanced projects, we're using the Azure Data Factory, where you can do some low code, where you can do some drag and drop. So this a combination of where you can do magic with Azure functions.
I saw another hand somewhere. No. I have a question. I'm really interested by all those blocks. I like Lego, I guess you do too. It also implies something according to your security tactics, I think. So things out there in the open. How did you handle this?
Yeah, so when you are introducing middleware, especially on your data layer, you already have something where you can do you can organize access management. So we have, for example, suppliers that want to push their data in an ERP system, or you have retailers that want to pull all your data from your DAM, for example, and you can organize that in your middleware layer. You can say, okay, these are the endpoints that I'm exposing to you, and you have access to those endpoints. And when, okay, you're not a customer anymore, so I now revoke your access.
Exactly, okay. clear.
So that access management in the middleware layer,
That's where the gatekeepers are.
yeah, the
basically.
gatekeepers
Yeah,
are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions? Misha, I think.
Theoretically, it's more flexible and it should be faster and things like that. Maybe it's the valley of despair that we are creeping out at this moment, but in most of the projects that I have seen from a distance sometimes, that were working with middleware and with more PWA and, well, actually into the direction of composable commerce, took quite some effort, quite some time, quite some, some budget as well. So do you think that we are already at this stage capable of really being more flexible, or are we working to a architecture that is in theory or in your head or in your, your passion is more flexible, but if we need a project right now and we need to connect a system, is it really faster? Is it really flexible already?
I think it depends a little, but I think you need. I think the big step that most of our customers made is they are starting to realize we are moving in a direction, and that is a good direction. So, so I have customers that say, okay, I don't like the search in Magento. Should I go to Shopware because it has a better search? No, I say no. You take a separate search engine. You go to Tweakwise or something similar, and they say, but that doesn't feel right. And I want to show them that it actually feels right to have more of a components that are better suited to your business. And once you realize that and you say, okay, I need, and the same goes for a middleware layer. Okay, we are now introducing this middleware layer. We go do this low level, so we start slow. We do the first connections, and then when there comes a new connection, and then in time we upgrade that to more connections and more flexibility. But the customers that I have about 27 connections to connect in all their systems on a one-to-one connection, and they don't know what is going on. They cannot monitor that. They cannot see where something is wrong. And then we have to go on, and we have to go into 3-4 separate systems to scan through the logs. Okay, where does this order go? When did it come? Why is it not being fulfilled? In which system is not sending the order, or what status is it in, and that sort of stuff. Yeah.
If I
Yeah. Yeah.
That's it.
Does that answer your question? Okay. There's another question here, Jamie, or remark?
I don't really have a question. Obviously, we're in the same, I'm very familiar with composable commerce. And we have a little bit of different setup of what you mentioned as a middleware. We are more into commerce composing there with dynamic data and blah, blah. But, I find your question very interesting because I get that question a lot, like, hey, are we ready for this? And I think it's very important to understand what kind of shop are you talking about. Because obviously, not everybody needs a Ferrari. And, some people just need a bike to get from A to B. And that is fine. This is not for everyone. Oh, you're trying to get me? Oh, yeah. And I think that is very important. You always need to be honest with your customer. We talk with people and we say, yes, but this is not, sometimes I have to say, yeah, but this might be a little bit too much, right, for you. On the other hand, we do have customers who grow in 3 years from 10 million to 300 million turnover, who then became part of a very big stock-listed company, bought them, and they all of a sudden had to deal with technology like stock systems that they built from scratch 20 years ago, and some developer protecting it, like, don't touch this. And then, we have to extract that data and be able to use it, but make it available for a company that is growing fast, right? We go from a very strong, very legacy software, combine it with something very new, and then you need definitely a system like this. But not everybody needs that yet.
Well, we all want a Ferrari, I guess.
Everyone wants a Ferrari, right?
All right. Any other questions or remarks? Okay, let's wrap it up also from our side. Thank you, Bavo. Very interesting and impressive talk. And then for me, it's also time to announce that I want to thank you again for coming. Thank the speakers. Get in touch. There are a few of us around here. There are several other ways to contact us. And I always get the reminder to also point out that we also use Instagram nowadays. It's going to be big. Yeah. Exactly. So that's there's a lot of ways to reach out. Please do. We're now going to enjoy some drinks and some food made available by IO Digital. And I want to say that's a wrap. Thank you.